Hello, my name is Tristan Pirouz. I'm in charge for the commercial activities at Deepcrawl'u. Deepcrawl'u is an SEO on-page crawler. Today I'll be speaking to you on the topic of indexing, more precisely how we shift you towards indexing smartly. So, what will I be running through in this presentation? We'll be looking at two scenarios in which we face ourselves as webmasters. First one being over-indexed, and the second one being under-indexed. We'll be looking at reasons for which we find ourselves in these two scenarios. Then we'll be touching upon possible solutions to these reasons. And we'll be looking at control mechanisms, how we can navigate the, essentially Google, to see the content that we wish to see be seen in our SERPs. Further, we will elaborate that the success of indexing is inadvertently affected by the optimum size of our website, which is basically determined by our market leader. And then Mehmet Aktur will be basically putting all this process into practice. We'll be looking at case studies where Mehmet Aktur will be introducing us to a case study on over-indexing, and I'll be looking at two further case studies on under-indexing. So, the challenge. The World Wide Web started in 1993 and has now, the last figure in 2014, grown up to, in terms of internet users, up to 13 billion users. And in terms of website domains, we have 1 billion users. That's great. However, in terms of Google, if we look at the index pages, we actually have, so these are the pages that when you put a query within the search or within Google, what pages are actually coming out. In total, we expect by 2016 to have 60 trillion index pages. So just to kind of give you the vast challenge of what we are competing against, or our individual index pages are competing against, if we divide this by the number of total internet users, we see that each page is competing against 20,000 pages. So here we have the Dortmund yellow wall. Total capacity is 20,000, and here you see really kind of what I want to highlight here is, in order to be recognized by the camera within the football stadium, as an individual fan, I need to either shout the loudest and hope that nobody else is chanting, two, have one of these massive flags over here and be really getting the attention of the flag. Or three, in the optimum case, I have the microphone. I chant the relevant songs, club-specific songs, in order to animate the whole crowd, getting the attention of the camera. And this is really what we want to do with our index pages, the pages that are being seen by Google. So, looking at the previous slide, we see that we have really, I could look through three examples. I can either shout the loudest, or I can actually animate somebody with a microphone. Here, this basically tells me I need to look at all my digital assets, not only my website, but I need to be looking at my sitemap, my landing pages, and all, of course, many others. Within Deepcrawl'u, we actually offer the universal crawl, where you can conduct a gap analysis to really optimize your indexation. Not only do you need to look at your own digital assets, but you need to look at your competitors in order to determine what is it actually that I'm competing against. So, what is indexing? Indexing is the control process or measure of what pages are being indexed. Really, here we remove the mystery of what pages are being showcased in Google. Why is it that we wish to index? Really, in general, Google says the less or the more often we crawl a page, the higher the authority, and as a result, the higher we rank as individual pages. A study made by SEO Clarity, if we look at here, the green mark showed basically that pages that have not been crawled or seen by Google, or indexed really, significantly lost in rank after not having been crawled for a period of 14 days. Really, this tells us if a page hasn't been crawled within a certain time period, then it receives less authority. By the way, throughout this presentation, I will indicate with if you want to read more, there's more information within the presentation, actually. So, great, I know that I want to be, I know what indexing is, I know what why I want to index my pages. Let's initially see where is it that I'm, as a webmaster, actually positioned. So how many pages am I indexing? So here, in simple terms, we look at the URL universe, then we analyze this, and then we validate it. In greater depth, how do you determine what pages within your website are being indexed? You look at, you have different URL sources that you can look at. Ranking checking, use tools such as SEMrush. You can analyze your log files. Then you can look at your search console. Here, this is actually interesting. This is something I was told recently by an ex-Googler. With the search console here, you can actually download the individual pages that, or sample size of pages that have been indexed. If you do this on a daily basis over a period of, let's say, 3 months, you will more and more understand what pages are being indexed or not. Further, we can look at our sitemaps and the organic traffic. In order to get a more complete overview, you can site:, your domain, or if you want to look at your individual URLs, you can info:, this. When you've built this complete list, then you want to dedupe it and crawl it in a tool such as Deepcrawl'u, for instance. Following the analysis, you want to validate, where you compare this to the index pages count in the search console. So once I've established how many pages within my complete website architecture are actually being indexed, I can determine am I being under-indexed or over-indexed. Under-indexing is when pages you want traffic to or want to be ranked are not being indexed. I'll leave this one for a while. Over-indexing is when pages you do not want indexed are indexed, leading to private pages being public or duplicate content. So, what I want to run you through today, really we want to position ourselves between, so just above under-indexing and just below over-indexing, which we call smart indexing. Reasons for which we fall into either one of those categories with regard to under-indexing, for instance, include when we experience thin content, undiscovered pages, inefficient architecture, slow performance individual sites, or sites that have been made non-indexable by mistake. We'll be looking at some of these examples in the latter pages. We experience over-indexing when we have an incorrect canonical tag, a lack of no index, and a lack of canonical tags. So let's look at some examples of under-indexing. Thin content. Thin content is experienced when there's a lack of unique content. Really here what you're doing, you're not making Google it possible to understand what your page is about. So this can ultimately will lead probably in duplication of your pages. Not in all cases though. Undiscovered pages, these are the pages that may not be discovered due to insufficient linking or high crawl depth. So here really we have the architecture of the website where I've done a complete site audit where the site audit tells me there are 13 levels within this particular website, which represents 12 clicks away from the home page, where green is marked as the unique pages. So these are the pages that have unique content. Yellow is marked as duplicate pages, so the pages that where really Google cannot differentiate from one another, and the non-indexables are marked in gray. And really, what Google says, any pages, or what we also recommend, any pages after level 6, I doubt in this case are very much crawled by the bot or even seen by the user, because in general terms, look at it from your own experience. How often do you dig into a website, and how many clicks, how far down do you get within the website or the given website? This is followed by crawl efficiency. So you got to look at it. Google allocates a given amount of time to each individual domain. For a larger domain, this may be more time. For a smaller domain, this may be less time. And this is dependent on how well the domain has performed in the past, from the past crawls. So if you look at this pie chart as 100% of the time that has been allocated to the given domain, we see that only 20% of the time is actually, representing unique pages, is actually allowing the website to perform better within the Google search. While over 50% of the crawl is, while it doesn't harm my crawl, it is basically, it doesn't benefit. I don't gain anything in terms of ranking. So this would be an example of an inefficient use of crawl budget. Examples of over-indexing. So a lack of no index can result in an index bloat, causing a dilution of link juice and constrained crawl budgets. Really, solutions to this is, if you have the resources, if you have the time on your site, try to make these unique pages, or change the template for future pages to be more unique. And alternatively, you put a canonical tag on it. So you see here there's a trade-off between canonicalizing and duplicate pages. So generally at Deepcrawl, even if there are no other versions of a page, then that page, this is what we recommend, that page should still include a canonical tag that links to itself, which ultimately avoids any sort of possible duplication. So, having learned kind of how we can mitigate the reasons for which we fall either in under-indexing or over-indexing, let's look at control mechanisms that we can use in order to navigate the search or the Google to the content that we want to be seen. Here we have different control mechanisms that we can use. This include no index, disallow, and no follow. Really, the most important here to understand is that there's a trade-off between crawl efficiency and backlink authority. So at the top left of the graph, when we implement for instance, a rel no follow, yes, great for crawl efficiency, however, at the cost of backlink authority. Vice versa, at the bottom right of the graph, for instance, we put in a meta-canonical, great for backlink authority, however, comes at the cost of crawl efficiency. And here, on the top right, is something that is currently being discussed within the SEO world. Deepcrawl have positioned themselves that we are for this. There are also others who say, no, this is not correct. Really, there have been studies for both sides saying, yes, it does work. Others say that it doesn't work. But here we basically recommend and we say there are possibilities where you can gain both crawl efficiency and backlink authority. Maybe something worth looking into, in particular for the larger websites here in the crowd. So now we have mitigated the reasons for which we fall under individual categories. We've been able to navigate Google to the relevant content that we want to be seen. Does this mean that we rank high or that we rank first? If you look at the graph here on the bottom left, I basically looked at the pages that I index and compared that directly to 4 competitors. Ultimately telling me, well, maybe the proportion of pages that are being indexed within my crawl budget, if we look back at the pie chart that we looked at earlier, maybe while the proportion is very efficient, in comparison to my competitors, I'm still performing relatively, I wouldn't say bad, but my competitors are still outperforming me. Reason being, because they have many more index pages, and as a result, are ranking higher. So if we take this into example, for the market leader has 100,000 pages in total, 50% of which are indexed. My own site has 50,000 pages, 50% of which are also indexed, i.e. I've got 25,000 less indexed. So while the concept of indexing kind of tells us, okay, these are the pages that I want to be highlighted within Google, the concept of architecture is the ability to construct your website on the foresight of the market leader's website architecture size. So essentially here we look at three values: the market size, so this is the market leader. What is the average website size set by the market leaders? In the previous example that we talked about is 100,000. The actual size, what is the actual website size of the given site? This was my website, so 50,000. And the index size, what are the total number of return pages in search results? So in my case, 25,000. Again, here we face ourselves in two scenarios. Under architected, this is when your website is below the expected market size. And this is experienced when there's a lack of inventory, products, and content, and a lack of relevant categorization and facets. And this, for example, happens for new entrants within the market or for niche websites that, of course, also inherently compete against much larger markets. So, over-architected, the second scenario, this is when your website is above the expected market size, and this occurs when there's a low relevancy or low value pages without unique content created, uncontrolled categorization, and finally, an incorrect management of expired content, where typical examples here include auction sites, for example, or second-hand car delivery, second-hand car sites. Perfect. So, to sum up the process, ultimately we looked at why it is important, or to what extent we compete to one another in terms of pages, where the average is 20,000, or each index page competes to 20,000 individual pages. We looked at what indexing is. We learned how to measure our own domain indexed pages. Further, we looked at the two scenarios, under-indexing and over-indexing. We looked at reasons for which we fall into these. And we looked at possible solutions, as well as looking at the control mechanisms in order to index smartly in the best scenario. This really kind of, in order to illustrate this, how would this look like? In the optimum case, we would, on the right-hand side, the pie chart, we would have as many unique pages, really showcasing the majority of our domain. And then in terms of an architecture, here we really see most of the content is reached by the bot as well as by the user up to level 6. If we take the two concepts together, we can determine that we see ourselves within four scenarios. This is under and over architected and indexed, where if we look at this matrix, where the primary goal is basically to be located as close to the center as possible. So, having now kind of introduced the concept, let's put this into practice, and really we'll look at 3 case studies: over-indexing and under-indexing. Let's get started with over-indexing. Mehmet, please. Or maybe ahead of this, before we do that, does anybody have any questions before we run through the case studies? Did everybody understand the concept of indexing? The reason why we index, sorry, I'll stand up. The reason why we index, reasons for which we fall into either of the one category, the control mechanisms, etc. Please.
So, I like the point about monopolizing each page to itself, because obviously that stops you from getting errors in terms of obviously the page rubbish at the end. It stops those pages messing up. And obviously it stops other people from messing up the pages due to the content. However, I once read that Google and Bing say different things. Google is happy for you to do this. Bing, on the other hand, isn't. Is that
Okay.
still the case? Have you seen anything to suggest otherwise?
I don't actually know. Generally, this is kind of the norm that we do, but I actually don't know. I'll have to, yeah, maybe I'll definitely be discussing this in the team and I'll get back to you. Cool, excellent. Anything else? Okay, I think, Mehmet, you have to go.
Okay.
Sorry.
No problem. I will continue in English, but of course I can fail sometimes. Sorry now. And this, I have an example from one of our customers, and it's a real estate listing company, and it is quite big company. And as you can see, we just made 400,000 crawl in Deepcrawl'u, and actually, as you can see, it's all green table, and it looks like everything is okay. But and you can also see that there is not any duplicate pages, and just 400 and something. It's not that much, but the thing was actually there were too many duplicate body content, and it was because of the listing pages. For example, they have a page for Istanbul real estate, or let's say they have a page for Istanbul apartments, and they have a page for Ankara apartments. And even they don't have any list in they don't have any apartment in their pages. The page was also indexed, so even if it's an empty page, Google can crawl again, and that's why it just became too much duplicate page content. And how we decrease it? It's really easy way, as you know. We just made a no index if there is no advertisement in a listing page, and we made like maybe more than 200,000 no index. And if there will be advertising in this page, it will be automatically became indexing. So after that, as you can see in the next scroll, nearly 50% of the web page became no index, and as you can see, there is no duplicate body content anymore. And after that, actually, it's not very big numbers. It's like, actually, it's quite big numbers, but it is just for 3 weeks, and the bounce rate became 5% less, and the sessions just became 3.5% more, and the numbers about 100,000 session. Yeah, it's about my case. If you have any question, you can ask.
So no index is not an issue?
If you use correctly, I mean, there were no any content in these web pages, so that's why we put no index in it. If there was a really beneficial content, it would be a problem, but there wasn't any beneficial, it was just empty pages, so that's why we use no index.
Yeah, I think at this point it needs to be made clear that no index does not harm you. Can you hear me? Sorry. Does not harm you. However, you raise, or if there is relevant content, you raise the potential of ranking very high. That is because oftentimes we see that web pages are being no indexed, really to get rid of a problem, but you're actually creating a new problem. So, anything else to add?
No,
There is no question.
Okay, cool. Excellent, thank you very much. So, next case studies, we'll be looking at 2 case studies with regard to under-indexing. First one being modernisa.com, which was actually a project that was led by an ex-colleague of SEO Zio, Ada Mendes over there. He's sitting at the very end. I hope I'm going to make a good impression. Otherwise, Ada is there to answer any questions. And then the next one will be Dadodoc.fr, which was handled by an agency in Poland named Elevate. So, Modernisa, Ada, he initially set off a sample crawl of 20,000 URLs, in which he identified, so these are the first 20,000 from the homepage, in which he identified a mere 282 unique pages. So really only 208, or just under 300 pages were able to rank within Google. I imagine, well, actually what we learn later is that they have had a relatively little views to what they could have had. And then they had an astonishing 98% of non-indexable pages. Later, Ada learned that this 98% of non-indexable pages were wrongly implemented canonicalized pages, which meant that the key content was not seen by Google. After looking at these canonicalized pages and optimizing and determining what pages are actually relevant, which ones do I want to be, or what content do I want to be seen by Google, i.e. which pages do I want to be indexed, he achieved to basically get 83% indexed or unique pages, and reduce the number of non-indexable pages from, what was it again before? From 98% to a mere 7.5%. Result being 373% increase in sessions, organic traffic, 227 increase in new users, and most importantly, a 400% increase in transactions on the pages that were changed. So really kind of speaks for itself here. Second example, this was a project that was led by Bartos, the founder of Elevate. It's an agency and was consulting for a client in France. He initially decided to do a complete site audit in which he crawled just above 250,000 URLs. Very quickly he learned more than half of the domain is being no indexed. On top of that, he also learned, when you remember the point of undiscovered pages, the crawl that we conducted all the way up to level 100 actually, there was still pages being found by the bot, I imagine not by the user. So really we can say anything from after level 6 or any of this content over here is not even being seen by the, or is unfortunately not being seen by the bot nor the user. So Bartos basically looked at this project, made the changes, actually decided to what is it called again? What is it? Decrease the size of the website. I've got it. Decrease the size of the website from an initial 250,000 to 140,000 pages, achieving to where he achieved to represent, or the unique pages representing 3/4 of the pages, initially having only 40%. And as a result, if we remember the study of SEO clarity, Google actually was crawling the domain 10 times more often than previously, which means higher crawl authority and higher ranking, which resulted in organic user sessions that had gone up from a 30% decline to a 65% increase. If we take this back to the concepts that we introduced earlier, we see that the French website was previously over-architected and under-indexed, and now with the changes that Bartos or Elefate made, really been able to shift towards the center of this matrix. So many of these, or really, if you tackle the subject of indexing, myself, of course, I'm from Deepcrawl, but I also know that much of this can be handled and audited within Deepcrawl. So if you are, here's a trial account that is available. This is valid till the 14th of December, however, for a period of 2 weeks. Excellent. I'll also be uploading this presentation for all of you to see. Thank you. So, any questions? Please.
I have two questions. One is Pages Google to Search Console. Does it have some effect on crawl rate? Manually crawling a page, inviting Google robots to crawl the page?
Sorry, I didn't understand the question. Sorry.
I'm talking about
Thank you.
Search Console.
Yeah?
There is Pages Google tool, you know? You
Yeah.
can invite Google robots to crawl a page. Have you ever seen an evidence that this has positive effect on crawl rate? Inviting Google robots to crawl a page?
Sorry, I don't understand. I'm very, very sorry. Do you want to maybe say it in...
I'm talking about Search Console, you know. There is a Fetches Google tool there.
Yes.
You can invite Google robots to a single page and crawl it. And you can also submit those pages to Google search engine result pages.
Ah, yes, positive.
You know?
Yes.
Have you ever seen an evidence that this has some positive effect on crawl rate?
Yes, absolutely.
Then maybe we should maybe increase the crawl rate by doing this regularly. I know it's up to 500 URLs per month or per week.
I can actually send you later, maybe when we talk, I can give you an article in which this is being described.
Yeah, great. And second question, you said a domain has, let's say, 1,000 URLs.
Yes.
B and C, its biggest rivals has thousands of pages, for example.
Correct.
If I understand correctly, you said you cannot beat them in rankings or similar saying.
So this is, of course, this is a concept. So there's, so this is kind of more the theory, and in practice, of course, if your individual page is much more relevant to the respective search query, yes, you will be ranking higher. But if you take the whole website as a total, of course, the page with more indexed pages, provided that it is, it has a nice website architecture, will rank higher.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else? Maybe on the, even on the case studies, if you have any questions on the case studies, to ask Mehmet, or if Ada allows, maybe on the Modernisa case. Excellent. So this presentation will be available online. And if you do have any other questions, you've got my email over here. Do check out our tool, and hopefully you'll index all very, very well. Fantastic. Thank you guys.
Thank you so much.